Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I needed to voice over some of what I had already done because I hadn't separated things out quite yet. So here is the mine as what I had at this point. Let's jump back in and I'll keep talking about it. I did use some of the paint that I had of mixture from previous projects, more so just to test the color and see if I wanted to use this or if I wanted to shift to a different color that I have. I'm still debating back and forth on that still. The reason it's not going to be black is that when doing some research, I found that because of the flammability of both the coal dust and the coal itself, they'll have strong ventilation for the dust, but then they will essentially paint the cuts in that with dirt so that helps bring the fire hazard down. So this is just one of the colors that I was using, and I think it's okay, but I may end up using a different one. We'll see. Like I've said in previous videos, I went layer by layer and then just flipped it upside down, measured out that I did want to do room and pillar, what they call it. And I know that some of it isn't exactly measured, the same everywhere, but it works for what I want. And took the router, like I said, to leave a little bit of overhang that I can stick lights through, but also give some stability to it still. And, just took the router and went through it. I didn't film any of that, one for kind of safety's sake. I didn't want to be distracted by both the camera while using the router. So that's why I don't have any clips of that. This is the level that the conveyor comes in from the mine building. And so I originally didn't have anything planned for this, but decided that it would be a good idea to carve out some portion of it for machinery to either be loading the conveyor or, just machinery itself that's, being dumped into and feeding into the conveyor. This is the spot that I plan to have a entrance that, people can, or that can be driven up into, and decided that it would look kind of neat having a angled piece to it. So I ended up doing that. And then just, whatever I thought would look good for the pillars. I'll probably put some sort of bracing here. I'm not positive yet, but we'll see how it goes. And then the last piece, I ended up doing a mistake on it, and that I didn't flip it over and draw on the bottom side for the pillars, and actually drew it on the top, and then just had at it with the router. And at first I was pretty upset with myself, but as I started thinking about it, where this is the bottom layer, actually having this little piece of foam, that everything's connected to, I think will be better, so that as I'm working on it and the potential for movement is there, I'm not breaking off pillars. And, the other thing is potentially they could break off, if they're being moved. So what I ended up doing was just lowering the router a little bit more and going back over it again to give it a thin base, but still tall enough that machinery would be able to be in there. And from what I've seen, there are coal mines that it's pretty tight quarters in terms of height of the ceiling. So that is what I've been working on today. I also went out and pulled some of my dirt stockpile from the garage, and as you can see, there's a good cake pan full of it that I plan to use this to put inside of the mine to make it look like it's actual dirt and not just, foam, cubes or rectangles, whatever you want to call them, that are in there. So my plan is to sift this tonight and then go back to the foam piece tomorrow and see what we can get done there in between some other things that I've got to get done. There's a little bit of prep work that I still need to do at the mine. Really, it's just getting this groove filled in with sculpt to mold so that it is flush and not indented there. So I'll get that filled, and then I'm going to start tonight on getting everything painted. I decided that I wasn't going to use this color that I was testing with. Even though it's okay with the dirt, it's also not the greatest match. And I'm not too happy with how the marker bled through. And as I was doing the grade crossing with the Y, I realized that the asphaltium is a good color that blends well with the dirt. But as I've got a lot to paint, as you can see, all of this inner stuff needs to be painted. I'll probably end up needing to use some of the burnt umber as well. The only real difference that I can see is the burnt umber is a little darker than the asphaltium, but I should be able to brighten it up just enough to match pretty closely with mixing it with this trail tan and khaki. So I am going to get some of the paint mixed up and get ready to paint this, and at least paint some of it tonight. I'll probably work on the sculpt to mold tomorrow just because it's a little late and it's a little time consuming to get everything mixed up with that. And I don't really want to make a mess this late in the evening. So I will get the camera repositioned, and I'm only going to paint a little bit of it on camera just to show what I'm doing, and then we'll go from there. Okay, we're only going to paint this little corner here just to show what I'm doing and kind of the techniques that I'm going to do. I'm just pouring the paint right into the foam. That way it's nice and, has a thick coat on it to where I shouldn't have to go over it multiple times. The other thing that I know that I shouldn't be using this fan brush, as I said, but it's just the best tool that I have right now. Let's do this. Actually, looking at that, I shouldn't even need to mix any of the lighter color in there. At least with how that burnt umber looks on it. And I'm not too worried about the upper spot if it has these, paintbrush marks on it, just because I will be putting, there is another layer on it, and this will be glued anyway, so it shouldn't show through. And if it does, I'll just come back and fix it a little better. But that's all I'm doing as far as the paint. And then while it's still a little wet, I'm just going to sprinkle some of the dirt in. Just try and get it up on the side. We have to do this. Probably can't see that, but that's really all I'm going to be doing. Once things dry with the paint a little bit more, I'll go through and probably put some glue down just to make sure that the gravel or the dirt stays where it's at. But that's really all I'm going to be doing. It's pretty simple. All right, I only got the bottom level done tonight. It took me longer to paint it than I thought it would. I think it looks good so far, and I'm pretty happy with it. I went back just to make sure that there wasn't any blue spots, and I can't see any, so I'm happy with that. As you can see, there was a lot of dirt that came off of it when I was hitting it to make sure anything that wasn't stuck to paint was coming off. I will end up vacuuming this up and reusing it on the next levels up. I ended up only using the asphaltium and the burnt umber. I didn't mix any of the lighter colors into it. I felt that the two were pretty close to each other, and felt that it gave it just enough variety that I'm not going to do any mixing and mess things up. So we're just going to stick with those two colors. We're going to let this sit and dry overnight, and then I'll come back and do the fronts. I just didn't want to cause any more of a mess on the table than what's already there. So I'll leave it with that, and we'll pick this back up in the morning and into tomorrow, and see everybody in a bit.